Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Drums and Drams. My name's Cameron, and today we've got episode 8 of the weekly Dram in 2024. Now, I'm feeling pretty good about the way this series is going on the channel. I've managed to largely remain consistent. We've only missed one episode of the weekly Dram, although this past week there was a little bit of a scare, and if you were in the live stream, you know what I'm talking about. I ended up spilling a glass of whiskey on my laptop when I was filming. Somehow my laptop has survived, at least up to this point, and I managed to get all of last week's content out, even though it did happen in a very condensed time period between Saturday and Sunday. I got 3 videos out here on the channel. We'll talk about all that kind of stuff, but again, as I do in all of these weekly Dram videos now, I want to remind you that if you want to skip over all the talking kind of about the channel and previewing the upcoming week and all that stuff, if you want to just get to the review portion, which today is going to be a Hardins Creek Jacobs Well review, specifically batch 2, the 211-month release. I do have batch 1 here for a comparison. If you want to just skip to that, no hard feelings. The chapter markings are in the description of the video, and you can find them on the little scroll bar at the bottom as well. But if you are wanting to stick around and hear more about the channel and what happened this past week, we'll talk about it right now. So 3 videos came out. We had the James E. Pepper decanter review, which, you know, I went a little clickbait on the thumbnail. Nothing crazy, I don't think, and I compared it to Blanton's Gold. There were some strong feelings about that, and of course, unironically, that video did very well, right? A little clickbait in there, some hardcore opinions, that's what I want to say, in the comment section, and of course, it does well. So that sucks in some ways. I mean, I'm going to try to balance moving forward on the channel a little more of that. I hate to call it clickbait because I don't go fully into that, but a little more of that kind of approach while also still providing what I hope is good information for the viewers. But that video did very well. And then there was the most recent performance video, and that was a review of Barrel Amburana finished bourbon along with a pretty massive piece for percussion and electronics. If you haven't seen that performance video, I would encourage you to check it out. And if you don't know what that series is, the very first performance, we could call it batch 1 if we want, that was a review of Jack Daniel's single barrel proof rye. I also played a little jazzy vibraphone solo on that one. So it's a cool series. Check it out if you haven't on the channel. And finally, for Scotch Sunday, Brooklotti 18. Those Scotch Sunday videos aren't doing wonderfully well, but that's okay. I mean, I still want to keep making Scotch content, and so that's what happened this past week on the channel. We had a great live stream, and I think, you know, everything is moving in the right direction for me. So we're going to talk about what is coming up this week. We have a barrel pick coming up, the very first one, but first, let's get into the review for today. Again, we're focusing on Hardins Creek Jacobs Well batch 2, 211 months, which is 17 years, 7 months. That is the age statement. That's a crazy good age statement from Jim Beam. This thing's coming in right around $180, so about $10 per year. At this age, 10 per year is a great, it's a great model, I think, for premium whiskey. And the proof on this is 109 or 54.5% ABV. Now, on the other side, we have batch 1, 184 months, which is 15 years, 4 months. If you want to read more about this release, look it up, you know, Google this. You can read about the blend of mash bills and the blend of ages that's, you know, comprising this batch. And this one is bottled at 108 proof, so only 1 proof point less, or 54% ABV. So we're not going to start with the older release. We're going to start immediately with this brand new 211 month aged batch 2. I have put these in a blind with the Boston, Claremont, and Frankfurt releases. I won't say yet how that went. That was on a live stream. If you were there, you remember it. If not, I will tell you. But instead of clouding everything at the beginning here, let's get straight into this 109 proof product from Jim Beam on the nose. Here we go. All right, so right away, I'm getting kind of like almost like a donut, like a powdered sugar donut kind of quality. There's great like vanilla sweetness. It's got this kind of baked good kind of thing going on in there. Definitely classic Jim Beam notes. Peanut butter. This is not brittle peanut shells, thankfully. At this age, it rounds out. Creamy peanut butter, a nice chocolate note, big oak, big leather, all the things that you like from an aged Jim Beam product. So right away, it hits you over the head. It's very classic, but it smells great. There is something kind of sour about this, though. Like with all the sweetness, with all the oak, with a little bit of the savory kind of spices or peanut butter, even with all of that, there is a little sour funk to it, and this is not uncommon for Jim Beam. When I think about Knob Creek 12 year, this is really the first product in any of their lines when you think about, as you move up the kind of age ladder, let's call it. Once you hit 12 year Knob Creek, that's when you start to get funky oak. I think before that, you get more spicy oak, more, youthful kind of oak influence on the whiskey. But Knob Creek 12, it gets funky, it gets sour. And if I ever say sour oak or sour leather, Knob Creek 12 is the best way for you, if you're unfamiliar with what I mean by saying that. That's the best way to taste it and kind of internalize, what I might be talking about. And you might interpret it differently. But this has that kind of sour component on the nose. But overall, I think it smells great. There's just kind of a freshness to it. Even though it is so old, it retains a little bit of lively freshness. It doesn't feel so bogged down. I think if you threw some more water in this, it could turn a little more in that direction. Like when you smell some of the old Rhetorics, the Orphan barrels, those are bottled at such a low proof that they feel tired. Even Barterhouse. I love Barterhouse, but it's just a tired whiskey. This thing has some life to it still, even at 17 years, 7 months. So onto the palate now. Cheers. This is great stuff. Yeah, that sourness that I was picking up on the nose really comes off on the palate. It's like a sour cherry. I mean, it really does come off like some sort of candy, like a sour cherry candy. Maybe like a sour, if you've ever had a Zot. I know Zot's candies, those are kind of classic, right? Some people might not know what I'm talking about, but if you've ever had like a cherry Zot, I think cherry is a flavor. There's a little fizzy thing on the inside of it, and the cherry is a little bit sour. That's kind of what this is like. I mean, yes, that is wrapped up in this beautiful kind of oak, peanut butter chocolate, vanilla, but like, powdered sugar kind of sweetness. Yes, all of that is there. But the palate is really where this fruit sour profile comes through. And as we get into the finish now, I would say this is heavy on the leather. It's pretty standard stuff for Jim Beam. So I'm saying a lot of notes right now that feel, I mean, they're specific in that I'm talking about these notes, but some of you out there might be saying, well, what differentiates this from other Beam products? You could say these same notes about maybe this Jacob's Well or the Boston Claremont Frankfurt, and maybe that's true, and that's why we're going to do this side-by-side comparison to batch one, just to see what this side-by-side can really do, what it can bring out of this whiskey. And that's one piece of advice I would give you if you're thinking at home about how to continue developing your palate. I'm going to do some videos on this soon, but one way to develop your palate is to do side-by-sides. Yes, it is good to taste one whiskey. Maybe you have some notes in front of you from other reviewers, or you're watching a video like this one even. But to do a side-by-side helps you really pick out the differences between the two. It will even sometimes reveal things that you would have never picked up when you do it individually, and that's good. Sometimes it's not good because you can get a weird idea of a whiskey when you put two things next to each other that are really different. Sometimes it makes one of them feel even unpleasant, whereas by itself it would have never felt that way. So be careful doing it, but I would encourage you to try a lot of side-by-sides to help, again, kind of figure out these notes that maybe are harder to detect in a whiskey when you're having it solo. Anyways, we're going to do one more sip of this batch 2 before we go on to this comparison now. Yeah, second sip is getting a little funkier. Like this is getting into juicy fruit bubblegum kind of tang, sourness there. There's a little something artificially sweet about it. I don't know if I'm just overthinking it at this point, but that second sip really is getting me towards that sour leather kind of profile. So with that said, let's move on to batch 1. Let's just see how this differs. And I will say, I told you I was going to, give you my results. I don't remember the entire ranking as all the way up. We'll try though. I'll try to remember it, but I know for sure that in my blind flight between these two, Boston Claremont Frankfurt, batch 1 came in first place, Jacob's Well, and this came in last place. Okay, so interesting that I'm really enjoying batch 2 right now, even though in my blind it came in last place. I don't think blind flights are always perfect, especially when the products are so closely related like all of these are. So I think it's an imperfect system sometimes, but batch 1 now on the nose. Yeah, batch 1 on the nose. This is much spicier. I mean, it is about 2-ish years younger on the whole, and just a smidge lower proof, but we're not even gonna talk about the proof on this, but it has so much more spice, more cinnamon on the nose right away. Yeah, and I think I prefer this nose because it feels more balanced. Like right now, I'm not getting so much heaviness on the nose, even though I said batch 2 doesn't feel tired. But in this comparison side by side, I would say that I love the spice of batch 1. So very quickly side by side. Yeah, batch 2, big, funky, sour leather, juicy fruit notes that are really emerging now out of the glass. At first, I didn't pick those up, but this is why you do side by sides. Batch 1 on the palate now. Yeah. There's like a brown butter kind of like, what do I want to say? It's not quite molasses, but this feels like a really rich kind of, you know, imagine some sort of really chewy and viscous kind of caramel sauce. Or I mean, I guess molasses, you could really go there. It reminds me of the inside of some of those chocolates that you get in those multi-packs when you have the different fillings and the things, you know, in the heart-shaped box or whatever. I know Valentine's Day was a few weeks ago, but some of the insides of those that have that really kind of, I don't know what else to call it. It's viscous kind of filling that's in there. That profile is what I'm getting off of Jacob's Well Batch 1. Yeah, I think that's really nice. Let's go back to Batch 2 one last time here. All right, so I don't think you can go wrong with either of these. Truthfully, I think Batch 2 is great whiskey. I prefer Batch 1. Obviously, this is not going to be sitting around on shelves very much anymore. Although, I will say, this entire series, the prices have been great, considering the age statements on these, and the scarcity is not crazy. These have been relatively available. When they drop, they kind of sit around places. I know even now, some of those Boston Claremont Frankfurts are still on shelves in different markets here in the U.S. I know this Jacob's Well Batch 2 sat in Ohio for quite a while. It was not picked over. So I do have to commend Jim Beam for the availability, the price model of these products. I do appreciate it. One more sip of Batch 2. Yeah. Nothing really bad to say about either of these things. I think they're both great. And I think depending on the person, you may gravitate more towards Batch 2 or Batch 1. I think it very much depends on what you value in your whiskey. If you want a little more spice and freshness and balance, or if you want some really intense oak, hardcore aged whiskey profile, that would be more of a Batch 2 kind of thing. Now let's talk about what's coming up this week on the channel. We've got a couple of cool things. The first is I'm calling this Stagg Week on the channel. Now, recently I did a big flight of 5 different George T. Stagg vintages, 08, 09, 10, 2020, and 2023. So we've already kind of covered a lot of the George T. Staggs. This is going to be a Stagg Junior. I still have to call it Stagg Junior. It's going to be a Stagg Junior week on the channel of the last 3 releases. I've already reviewed 22A on the channel. 22B I've tasted in live streams. And now we have 23A, B, and C. And the C batch, I think, was a surprise for a lot of us. I'm going to be reviewing those all this week. Boom, boom, boom. Hopefully one day for each of them. So one after the other, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. The goal is Thursday night live stream this week is going to be a late stream, probably a 10:15 p.m. start time. I'll keep it on the shorter side, and I'm going to then blind all 3 of those after having reviewed them throughout the week. So we are doing a Stagg Week this week, but not just Stagg. We're also going to have Jack Daniel's 12-year Batch 2. Thanks to Tim for sending me that sample. And, of course, we're going to have a Scotch Sunday this week as well. There might not be a video Saturday. That's okay. If we don't get one out every day this week, I'm going to be okay with that. I am focusing some attention from this point, let's say over the next 2 to 3 weeks, on shooting a ton of shorts. And my rule for the channel is that it's the same thing with the clickbait. Again, you want to call it clickbait, air quotes, thing that I did with the James E. Pepper, which I don't think was that bad. One person was really offended, but they can get over themselves. It's the same thing with that as it is with the shorts for me. As long as I make the information that I'm presenting feel good, it doesn't feel like a bunch of BS that I'm trying to, get out there just for clicks and likes, then I feel okay doing some of this stuff. And for YouTube shorts, I know a lot of people are like, I don't want to touch that because what can you do in a minute? I have the same thoughts. I mean, a minute of content, it's kind of tough. I have some ideas. I'm going to try to shoot 30 to 40 of these things, schedule all of them out over the course of like 2 months, and see what happens at the end of that process. See what the growth is like on the channel, if those shorts viewers end up being long-form viewers or not. And if not, I'll course correct and figure out what I want to do with it. But I'm going to put some time into that moving forward. But I'm going to do my best to not, lose sight of the long form content here on the channel. As you guys can see, I've been putting out so much content, sometimes 7 days a week, sometimes 5 days a week. And, I'm not going to stop doing that. So yes, live stream this week, again, Thursday night, a late stream. Keep your eye out for that. I'm assuming 10:15 or 10:30 start time. That is Eastern. And finally, there will be a pop-up. I've already filmed this, a pop-up Scotch review of an 18-year Scotch that's being talked about as a value option. That's probably going to drop Thursday, so keep your eye out for that. I think that's going to do it, guys. Thank you for being here. If you want to help support the channel, check out the Patreon, $5 or $10 a month. And yes, the first barrel pick for Drums and Drams is happening this Friday, March 1st. River Roots Barrel Company. Sounds like we're going to have some really cool things to choose from up there, from different distilleries, different styles of whiskey. I cannot wait for that. The pick team has been assembled, and it's going to be a blast, and I'll keep you updated on how that goes as well. So that pick, I'm not sure how long it's going to take to turn it around, get it bottled and everything, hopefully fairly quickly, and we'll get the first Drums and Drams pick in the hands of the Patreon members. And then we're going to probably have to do some Patreon restructuring as well, because I think there's going to be a little influx of folks because of all this. But that's going to do it, guys. I recommend Jacob's Well Batch 1 and 2. I prefer Batch 1 just a little bit more, but you can't go wrong with either of these. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Cheers, and I'll see you next time here on Drums and Drams.